The horizon is a jagged scar, a permanent divide between a world of blinding radiance and one of eternal twilight. For a century, the kingdom of Solace has lived under the warmth of its artificial sun, a golden dome of prosperity built on the conviction that light is synonymous with life and shadow is the harbinger of death. Among those who enforce this divide, none are as feared as Kaito. At only 21, he is the youngest captain of the Solace Royal Guard, a man whose heart is said to be as cold as his armor. Driven by the memory of his childhood home in flames and the loss of his parents during an Umbra raid, Kaito became the king's lethal instrument. To him, the Umbra exiles are the darkness. The king's command was absolute. Reports had reached the capital of a high-value target hidden within the Forbidden Veil, a region where the light of Solace and the shadows bleed together. Rumors whispered of a girl, an Umbra healer named Lyra, who was allegedly brewing a soul-stealing plague designed to extinguish the Solace sun. Kaito did not hesitate. He led his unit to the edge of the veil. Moving through the dense, silver-gray mist, he felt the familiar weight of his blade. His footsteps were silent, the predator who had forgotten how it felt to be the prey. He expected to find a sorceress draped in malice, surrounded by the stench of decay. Instead, as he crested a ridge, he found a clearing bathed in a soft violet luminescence. There, kneeling in the damp earth, was Lyra. She didn't look like a monster. Her silver hair cascaded over her shoulders like moonlight, and her hands were submerged in a swirl of dark energy. Kaito's pulse quickened, his fingers tightening around his sword. He prepared to strike, but then he saw what she was doing. Cradled in her lap was a small wounded animal, its side torn open by claws. The shadow energy flowing from Lyra's fingertips wasn't devouring the creature. It was weaving the flesh together. The wound pulsed with a gentle hum, and as the darkness touched the animal, it didn't scream, it sighed. The shadow Kaito had been taught to fear was acting as a needle and thread, mending what was broken with tenderness. Kaito felt a sweat break across his brow. The propaganda of Solace described Umbra magic as a corrosive rot. Yet here was a girl using it to preserve a life. He stepped from the shadows, his blade gleaming with a light that felt suddenly abrasive. Lyra looked up, her eyes wide with terror. She didn't reach for a weapon or cast a curse. She simply shielded the animal with her body, waiting for the blow. For the first time, Kaito's hand trembled. He looked into her eyes and saw not a murderer, but a healer. He lowered his blade, unable to kill an innocent who radiated more kindness than his own kin. "Why aren't you fighting?" Kaito rasped. Lyra's voice was like a soft breeze. "Shadow does not have to be an absence of light. It can be the rest that the light requires." With a Solace patrol echoing nearby, Kaito knew he couldn't leave her. He pulled her into a hidden cave. Inside, Lyra shared her dream of a world where colors exist in the dark. Kaito felt a spark of forbidden hope, but the peace was shattered. The thud of boots approached. Kaito's second in command, Sora, let out a cry. "I smell the filth!" Sora screamed. "Find the witch and bring me her head!" He looked at the girl. Kaito realized that to save her life, he would have to betray his world. He knew his life was changed now. Before we continue, subscribe to the channel and tell us in the comments where you are watching from. Sora's voice was a jagged blade cutting through the silence. Inside the cave, Lyra's breath hitched, her fingers digging into the earth as she looked at Kaito with eyes that pleaded for mercy. Kaito knew that if he stepped aside, Sora would show no hesitation. He turned his back on the girl, his heart hammering, and stepped out into the misty clearing. Sora stood there, his golden cape stained, his sword humming with a predatory light. "Where is she, Kaito?" Sora asked. Kaito didn't blink. He pointed toward a ravine in the opposite direction. "She headed toward the dead marshes," Kaito lied. "I lost the trail, but her energy signature is fading west." Sora grunted, a flicker of doubt crossing his face before his discipline took over. He signaled the battalion, and the sound of heavy boots finally faded into the distance. For the first time, Kaito had betrayed his oath. But as he returned to the cave and saw Lyra holding that small creature, he realized he hadn't betrayed his honor. He had found it. Over the following weeks, Kaito lived a double life. By day, he was the stoic and ruthless captain of the guard. By night, he would slip through secret passages, reaching the Veil. In the quiet of their sanctuary, the war felt like a distant nightmare. Lyra taught him about the Umbra people, not monsters, but a society of healers who survived in the fringes. They fell into a deep, tragic love, a connection forged in the silence between heartbeats. He loved her shadow magic, and she loved the warmth he carried, a heat that nurtured their shared dreams. But the world of light was preparing for a final stroke. The King of Solace revealed the final dawn, a massive weapon powered by the core of the artificial sun. When activated, it would release a wave of radiance that would vaporize every living soul within the Umbra territories. It wasn't a victory, it was an extinction. Kaito stood in the back of the hall, his stomach turning as he saw the maps and the innocent faces of the people Lyra protected. The propaganda called it salvation, but Kaito finally saw the cruelty in the glare of the light. That night, the sky turned a bruised crimson color, a blood moon that heralded the end. Lyra met him at their cave, her face pale. She had felt the buildup of energy. "Kaito, if that weapon fires, there will be nothing left but ash," she whispered. She begged him to help her stop it, to infiltrate the capital and disable the core. They shared a final embrace under that red sky, a kiss that tasted of salt and the terrifying weight of their destiny. Kaito knew that helping her was high treason, yet looking at her, he realized he would rather die for a world that included her than live in a world of blinding light. Their plan was desperate. Kaito used his clearance to lead Lyra through subterranean tunnels, her shadow cloak masking their presence. But as they neared the pulsing core of the final dawn, Sora emerged from the golden mist, flanked by elite guards. His face was a mask of fury. He had been tracking Kaito for days, watching his brother crumble. Sora's voice was a low growl. "I wanted to believe you were still one of us, Kaito." Kaito stepped in front of Lyra, but Sora only laughed, a cold, hollow sound. "You think you're saving a healer?" Sora stepped forward, his eyes burning. "Ask her about the raid on the northern frontier, Kaito. Ask her who led the battalion that slaughtered your parents." Sora gestured toward Lyra. "Her father was the general of that raid. Her blood is what you swore to spill. She's been using your guilt to shield her people." Kaito felt the world tilt on its axis. He looked at Lyra, searching for a denial, but found only a devastating, silent confession in her weeping eyes, shattering his trust completely. The revelation of the blood on her hands felt like a physical blow, a weight that threatened to crush the very air from Kaito's lungs. His sword tip dipped toward the floor. Lyra didn't deny the truth Sora had shouted. Her silence was a heavy confession. She stepped forward, her hands open in surrender. She looked at him with eyes hollowed by a century of inherited guilt. Her voice was like dry parchment as she explained that her lineage was indeed stained with the blood of his kin, and her entire life had been a penance for those sins. She told him that if his heart required her death to find peace, he should take it. But she begged him to save the innocent thousands about to be erased by the weapon. Sora didn't wait for Kaito's choice. He lunged with a roar of betrayal, his golden blade whistling through the air with the weight of shared training and new jagged hatred. Kaito parried by instinct, the clash of steel ringing like a funeral bell throughout the vast echoing chamber. Sora screamed, calling Kaito a traitor who had forgotten his parents' faces for the sake of a witch. Every strike was fueled by a righteous fury, intended to shatter his old friend. Yet Kaito didn't fight to kill. He fought to protect a future that didn't end in ash. He moved with desperate grace, redirecting Sora's blows with precise movements. Their battle a tragic dance of light and shadow mirroring the war itself. Above them, the final dawn weapon groaned with mechanical agony. The floor trembled violently as the artificial sun within the core reached critical mass. Beams of searing white light pierced the ceiling, shredding the grand architecture of the capital like wet paper. The city was breaking apart under the weight of the king's genocidal madness. Lyra rushed to the console, her hands glowing with a soft, restorative violet hue. She shouted over the roar that it was too late to disable the core. The energy had passed the point of no return. Only her shadow essence could dampen such intense heat. Only the void could swallow an unstable sun. Kaito realized with a sickening jolt what she was proposing. To stabilize the machine, she would have to merge her entire life force with it, vanishing into the core forever. Kaito tried to take her place, but Lyra caught his wrist, her touch remarkably steady and warm. She explained that his light energy would only feed the fire, making the explosion even worse. To save both their peoples, she had to be the sacrifice. He tried to pull her away, but the shadow energy was already drawing her in, her form flickering like a candle in a storm. In her final moments, she leaned forward, her forehead touching his as the world faded away. She whispered that in the darkness of her exile, she had finally found her color in him. With a final radiant surge of power, she stepped into the heart of the core. A massive dome of soft violet light washed over the city. It didn't burn. It felt like a cool breeze on a summer evening. Kaito watched as Lyra's physical form dissolved into shimmering particles, her spirit weaving into the machinery, until the artificial sun was silenced. The silence that followed was absolute. The war died that day as soldiers saw the violet glow, and their hatred suddenly drained away. Kaito was eventually stripped of his rank and exiled, his medals forgotten in the dust, but he walked away without a single word. Years later, he lived in a small cabin where light and shadow mingled in quiet harmony. He walked through fields of purple flowers that only grew where Lyra's essence had touched the soil. As he stood there one evening, a translucent, cool shadow hand brushed his cheek. He closed his eyes and leaned into the ghost of her touch, knowing she remained the silent guardian of the peace they had built together.